Chapter 1 Death is inevitable for all us. It is the fate of every human being born onto this plant from the day they first breathe air. Death is always lurking around the corner right where you least expect it. You could die today for all you know. Death feeds on fear and it waits to draw you in close before attacking. Carla Markelston. The words of Carla Markelston were believed to be nothing more than the ramblings of a crazy person. Some even believed her to be mentally insane or worse, that she had a really bad case of psychosis. But Carla was never seen again after she wrote those words. The reason behind her death had been a long-researched mystery. There had been reports of several people going missing in the town. There was a catch with them though. They all had died from their biggest fears. Every personal diary that was searched matched that said fear. Carla's sister, Nala, married a very handsome young man named Richard after surviving high school, and she gave birth to a young boy named Chris. Over the years, Chris cultivated a deep friendship with his neighbor, Audrey. Her home became a sanctuary, a haven he sought whenever the tempestuous storms of his parents' arguments threatened to engulf him. One evening, nestled within the comforting haven of Audrey's room, the familiar ritual of truth or dare commenced. Truth or dare? Audrey's voice, laced with a mischievous lilt, broke the comfortable silence. Truth, I suppose, Chris replied, a hint of apprehension coloring his tone. Knowing you, a dare would undoubtedly lead to a symphony of embarrassment. Very well then, Audrey teased, her eyes sparkling with an almost playful intensity. Reveal your deepest fear. A flicker of hesitation crossed Chris's face. Why, so you can exploit it for your amusement, he retorted, a subtle edge to his voice. Perhaps, Audrey admitted, a sly smile playing on her lips. Fine, Chris conceded, a touch of annoyance simmering beneath the surface. My deepest fear is drowning. Are you planning on making that a reality? He quipped, his voice laced with a wry undercurrent. Nah, plus, it's not like you're going anywhere anytime soon, Audrey teased, a playful glint in her eyes. Chris's cheeks warmed slightly, a shy smile playing on his lips. I mean, it's probably nothing to worry about, he chuckled, though his voice held a hint of concern. Don't you know how to swim anyway? Audrey's voice was soft, her gaze lingering on Chris a moment longer than necessary. Yes, but you know it's still a little worrisome for me, Chris admitted, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. Audrey's smile softened, a warmth blooming in her chest. Perhaps a little practice in your pool might help ease your mind, and be rather enjoyable, wouldn't you say? Later that afternoon, Chris donned his swim trunks and found Audrey waiting in the backyard. Ready to go? Audrey inquired. I suppose, Chris replied, his tone suggesting a less than enthusiastic readiness. With a dramatic cannonball, Chris launched himself into the pool, disappearing beneath the surface before resurfacing without a hitch. Guess it's nothing to worry about, he mused to himself, a flicker of relief washing over him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, signaling the end of another day, the afternoon swim drew to a close. It's been a blast, but I really need to head home now, Audrey announced, a bright smile gracing her face. See you tomorrow. Probably, Chris replied, a hint of weariness in his voice. Audrey disappeared inside, then out the front door, leaving Chris alone beside the glistening pool. He grabbed a fluffy towel and began to dry his damp skin, the cool air sending shivers down his spine as the sun's warmth faded. But as he finished drying himself, a chilling sight met his eyes. A creature, grotesque and unnerving, loomed nearby. Two large eyes glared from either side of its featureless face, sending a wave of terror crashing over Chris. Panic seized him, and with a heart-stopping scream, he stumbled backwards, losing his footing and falling into the inky depths of the pool. Water rushed into his lungs, a desperate fight for air replaced by the cold embrace of drowning. Audrey! Mom! Dad! He cried, his voice a strangled whisper lost in the quiet twilight. But his pleas went unheard, swallowed by the dark water and the encroaching silence. Chapter 2 The jarring shriek of Nala's alarm sliced through the pre-dawn silence, its insistent blare a stark contrast to the unnerving quiet of the house. Is Chris still asleep? Richard's voice was strained, a hint of unease creeping into his tone. Nala's response was a breathless, "I don't know." Panic began to claw at her throat. "He's probably with Audrey," Richard offered, but his words held little reassurance. "You realize it's 5:30 in the morning. He's usually banging on our door, complaining about insomnia or some other nonsense," Nala hissed, her heart pounding in her chest. "Maybe he finally got a good night's rest." Richard's voice was brittle, a facade of calm masking his own growing apprehension. "I'm going to check on him," Nala declared, her footsteps echoing through the empty hallways. But Chris's room offered no solace, the pristine bed a chilling testament to his absence. "Honey, he's not here." "I'm going to look for him," Nala's voice cracked, her fear now a tangible presence in the room. "I'll call Audrey's parents." Richard's voice was a frantic whisper as he frantically dialed the number. Audrey's mother's voice, laced with a chilling calmness, confirmed their worst fears. "No, he's not here. The last time she saw him was last night, out in the backyard, by the pool." A chilling silence hung in the air before Nala and Richard's eyes met, a shared dread fueling their desperate sprint towards the backyard. There, amidst the placid surface of the water, Chris's lifeless form drifted, a haunting image etched into their minds forever. "Chris!" Nala's anguished cry echoed, laced with a fear that clawed at her throat as she hauled him back to the surface. Richard cradled his limp body, his voice a raw, broken whisper, "He isn't breathing. He isn't breathing." The frantic calls to emergency services seemed to stretch on endlessly, each second an eternity as hope dwindled. The officer's casual inquiry, "It looks like something spooked him," felt like a cruel mockery in the face of their escalating terror. Nala's voice trembled, barely a whisper, "He was always so terrified of the water, of drowning. Do you think he'll be okay?" The officer's response, delivered with a chilling detachment, was a sentence of doom, "We're doing what we can, but I want you to know there's a chance he might not make it." Tears streamed down Nala's face, a torrent of grief unleashed as Richard's hand rested gently on her shoulder, a fragile comfort in the face of unimaginable loss. The thought of losing her only child, her precious Chris, shattered her world, leaving her adrift in a sea of despair. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital cast a cold, sterile glow over Nala's tear-streaked face as she stumbled through the double doors of the emergency room. The air hung heavy with antiseptic and a faint, metallic tang that clung to her like a shroud. Chris, her precious son, was whisked away on a gurney, his limp body a stark contrast to the frantic energy of the bustling F.e.a.r. The cacophony of beeping machines filled the silence, a jarring, relentless soundtrack to her mounting fear. Each beep seemed to echo in the vastness of her heart, a countdown to a tragedy she couldn't comprehend. "Please, please, let him be okay," she whispered, her voice hoarse with desperation. A doctor, his face etched with grim lines, rushed past, muttering orders that Nala couldn't decipher, but the urgency in his voice filled her with dread. Then, the beeping slowed, faltered, and finally, fell silent. A suffocating silence descended upon the room, broken only by Nala's ragged breaths. "No, no, no," she choked out, her voice cracking like brittle glass. A nurse, her eyes filled with a sorrow that mirrored Nala's own, gently touched her arm. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," she said, her voice soft yet laced with a sadness that cut deep. His heart, it just stopped. The words were a physical blow, a crushing weight that sent Nala to her knees, her body racked with sobs. "Chris," she cried, her voice a mere whisper, a plea to a universe that had cruelly snatched her son away. "Chris, my baby!" Her anguished cries echoed through the sterile halls of the hospital, a testament to the immeasurable loss that had just shattered her world. The chilling pronouncements of her sister, Carla, reverberated within Nala consciousness, "Death feeds on fear and it waits to draw you in close before attacking." The gravity of those words, a stark warning spoken amidst a chilling premonition, propelled her into action. A sudden surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins, fueling a desperate flight from the perceived danger that lurked within the confines of their shared abode. She burst from the room, her footsteps echoing with a frantic urgency as she sprinted down the dimly lit hallway, the oppressive silence amplifying the pounding of her heart. Behind her, Richard's voice, laced with a mixture of concern and alarm, sliced through the tense atmosphere. "Nala, wait!" His plea, however, was lost in the whirlwind of her panicked flight. He surged forward, his features etched with a mixture of worry and determination, pushing through the heavy mahogany doors of the elevator just as it began to close. The metallic clang as the doors slid shut echoed through the hushed corridor, a stark reminder of the rapid isolation that was closing in around them. Richard, his face still flushed with exertion, pressed the button for the designated floor, the numbers illuminating with a cool, detached light. His breath hitched in his throat as the elevator began its descent, a jarring, jerky motion that seemed to symbolize their uncertain fate. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, the quiet hum of the machine a jarring counterpoint to the pounding of Richard's heart, which mirrored Nala's frantic rhythm. Every creak and groan of the metal structure seemed to prolong the agonizing seconds, each floor they passed a reminder of their physical and emotional distance from the refuge they sought. He peered anxiously through the metal doors, his eyes scanning the hallway for any sign of Nala's, who was only visible as a blurred form fading into the distance. He could feel the chill of fear spreading through his veins, a chilling echo of the warning Carla had imparted. Relentlessly, the elevator finally reached the ground floor, the bell announcing their arrival a sharp, cutting sound in the heavy silence of the lobby. Richard immediately stepped out, taking a deep breath of the cool night air as he scanned the area desperately looking for any sign of Nala, an unsettling sense of foreboding settling upon them both. Suddenly over at the car, he saw her, Nala, crying in the front seat. He put a hand on her shoulder. "It's not your fault," Richard exclaimed. "We're gonna find out who did this to him," Nala exclaimed. "The least we can do is give him a proper burial first," Richard stated. Chapter 3. Today, we gather under a sky heavy with unspoken grief, to remember a life extinguished far too soon. The officiant's voice, strained with sorrow, echoed through the hushed chapel. The vibrant tapestry of his future, unwoven, lay scattered and lost. Audrey, her sobs a raw and ragged symphony of despair, could only whisper, "How could this happen? He was just here, with me." Her words, laced with a pain that seemed to shatter the very air, hung suspended in the suffocating silence that followed, a testament to the cruel and sudden emptiness left behind. Audrey's father's gaze lingered on her, a chilling stillness in his eyes. "He didn't follow you inside, did he?" he hissed, the whisper barely audible above the lingering unease of the evening. "No," Audrey stammered, "he said he was drying off and that I should probably head home." Her father moved towards her mother, their hushed tones a cryptic symphony of fear that Audrey couldn't decipher. The funeral's oppressive silence finally lifted, replaced by the chilling certainty of vengeance as Richard and Nala returned home. "We need to find out who did this to our son," Nala's voice was a venomous hiss. "My first guess is that Audrey had a hand in it." Nala's brow furrowed. A flicker of doubt in his eyes, Richard stated, "Are you sure? She's just a child, she wouldn't." Nala's sharp retort cut him off, a manic gleam in her eyes. "I know one way to find out." Chapter 4. A chilling ring pierced the silence, jolting Audrey from her reverie. She hurried to the door, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Chris's parents," she stammered, the words barely audible. "What is it?" "I'm alone, and really not." Before Audrey could finish her feeble excuse, Nala's steely gaze met hers. A malicious grin twisted Nala's lips as she shoved past Audrey, the woman's voice laced with barely concealed venom. "We're coming in, and you're going to make yourself scarce," she snarled, her eyes burning with a dark intensity that chilled Audrey to the bone. "You're the reason my son is gone, Audrey." "I know you are," Nala hissed, a threat coiled in her voice. Panic surged through Audrey as her carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Audrey's desperate cry, "Get out of my house!" echoed through the now ominous space, a futile attempt to regain control in the face of Nala's relentless accusations. "We should leave," Richard exclaimed as he turned back towards the door, but Nala refused. "I'm not leaving till I find evidence that she killed him." Nala screamed. Audrey ran over to the phone. "I can and will call the police if you don't get out," Audrey yelled. Nala proceeded to walk towards Audrey. "He told me you played that truth or dare game. He told you his biggest fear and you exploited it," Nala screamed. Richard's grip tightened. "Consider this, Nala," he began, his voice taking on a somber tone. "Your sister's words hold truth. Death often exploits our deepest fears. It's not unprecedented for someone to succumb to their own anxieties. In my work as a journalist, I've had access to people's personal journals, their final thoughts before their demise. Invariably, their deaths were linked to their most profound fears." Audrey's parents unexpectedly entered the house. "Audrey, what in the world is going on here?" her mother questioned, her voice laced with concern. Nala, ever quick-witted, responded, "We were simply ensuring Audrey's safety while you were away. We wouldn't dream of letting anything happen to her. It's always better to be safe than sorry." Audrey's father, beaming with pride, added, "Excellent work, Audrey. You've overcome a significant fear today." Turning to Nala, Audrey confided in a hushed voice, "My biggest fear is being home alone." Audrey's mom smiled gratefully. "Since you're all being so kind and watching Audrey, we need to make a quick trip to the store. Would you mind keeping an eye on her for a little while longer?" Nala shot Richard a hesitant glance, but he, eager to please Audrey's parents, quickly interjected, "Of course. We'd be happy to." Chapter 5. Audrey ascended the staircase and turned down the hallway towards her bedroom door. "This is it," she exclaimed, her voice laced with a hint of fear. "I've been hearing strange noises coming from the attic lately, and it's making me really scared about being home alone." Audrey's gaze drifted upwards towards the dusty attic entrance. "Well, not much by choice, I suppose," she remarked, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. "Guess I'm not alone." With a determined sigh, Audrey heaved the attic door open, a fleeting thought of future regret flitting through her mind. Meanwhile, Nala leaned towards Richard, her voice hushed. "She's pulling us into a trap," she whispered. Audrey's ears perked up. "You know I can hear you," she exclaimed, a touch of playful irritation in her tone. A chill snaked down Richard's spine as he and Nala stepped into the suffocating darkness of the attic. The air hung heavy with the scent of dust and decay, clinging to the warped wooden beams like a shroud. In the meager light filtering through a grimy window, they made out grotesque shapes hulking, rusted machines that seemed to leer with forgotten purpose. And lining the shadowed walls, like the decaying teeth of some monstrous maw, were ancient weapons, their rusted surfaces hinting at a violence long past, yet somehow still potent. That's what she used to kill Chris," Nala's voice cracked, the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air like a shroud. Audrey's sharp interruption sliced through the silence, a desperate attempt to stem the tide of grief threatening to consume them both. "Shut up about that. I didn't kill your freaking son. He was my best friend, my best friend." Her voice fractured, the carefully constructed wall of denial crumbling under the weight of her sorrow. Tears streamed down her face, hot and relentless, each one a testament to the gaping void left behind, a void that echoed with the ghost of laughter and shared dreams, now forever silenced. The air throbbed with unspoken pain. "Listen, I don't know who or what did this to him, but if I had to guess, I think it has something to do with people dying from their biggest fear," Audrey said, her voice trembling slightly. She glanced up at Richard, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. "You found that out in your job, didn't you?" Before Richard could respond, the room erupted into chaos. A guttural roar echoed through the space, followed by a bone-jarring tremor that sent objects flying. Audrey scrambled back, her eyes wide with terror as the axes hanging on the wall began to sway violently. One, a rusty monstrosity with a chipped head, tore free from its hook, its rope snapping with a sickening thud. It swung wildly, narrowly missing Audrey's head as she dove to the side. The room continued to shake, sending a cascade of dust and debris raining down. A shelf laden with glass jars and bottles toppled over, shattering against the floor. A heavy, ornate mirror cracked, its splintered surface reflecting the chaotic scene in a fractured kaleidoscope of light. Audrey, scrabbling for purchase in the swirling dust and debris, watched in horror as another axe detached itself from the wall, its blade glinting menacingly in the dim light. It swung with deadly precision, catching her off guard as she tried to rise, slicing through her with a horrific, sickening thud. Her body collapsed to the floor, a pool of blood blooming around her severed head, the very air thick with the stench of copper and fear. The chaos subsided as abruptly as it began, leaving only the aftermath of destruction and the chilling silence of death. The axe flung back and sliced into the glass of the window well, where screwed Nala exclaimed as they made their escape out the window and they saw Audrey's parents turn onto the street. Chapter 6. The following morning, a palpable tension hung in the air within the hushed courtroom. The gallery, primarily filled with Audrey's grief-stricken relatives, was utterly silent, a sea of somber faces. A pregnant stillness preceded the judge's voice, his tone grave as he addressed Audrey's parents. "Do you believe that your neighbor is responsible for the death of Audrey?" he inquired, his gaze sweeping across their impassive expressions. A somber silence followed before Audrey's mother stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. "Your Honor, evidence suggests a violent crime. We discovered the murder weapon, an axe, in the upstairs bedroom, mere feet from her severed head." "Your Honor, we're innocent," Richard exclaimed. Audrey's father spoke. "We have evidence, Your Honor, evidence that they did indeed commit the murder. Your Honor, please present your evidence," the judge declared with authority. Audrey's parents then presented a video recording that captured a significant confrontation. The footage revealed Nala issuing a series of threats to Audrey, insisting that she vacate the vicinity. The video documented the moment when Audrey invited Nala up to her room, abruptly ending at that point. From the footage provided, a singular inference could be drawn regarding the escalating tensions between the individuals involved. "Your Honor," Nala paused, her voice trembling as words escaped her grasp. The weight of her revelation pressed heavily upon her. How could she articulate the unspeakable horror she had witnessed? The creature she encountered thrived on the essence of fear itself. Chris had drowned, and now his fear of that very fate was laid bare for all to see. Audrey had perished in a home that had turned into her worst nightmare, leaving her to confront her terror of solitude. Carla had lived with a singular dread of death, and in the end, that dread had become her reality. This entity was not just a monster, it was a horrifying manifestation of mortality itself. Gathering her courage, Nala finally spoke. "I have to ask, what is your greatest fear? Why does it matter?" The judge asked, his voice steady but edged with an uncharacteristic tension. Nala's panic surged, and she screamed, "Just freaking tell me." The judge hesitated, his eyes darting to the shadowy corners of the room, as if expecting something to emerge from the darkness. "Fine, for the love of God, I'll tell you," he finally said, each word heavy with foreboding. "My biggest fears, actually are misjudging a case and getting myself or someone else killed because of it." Nala's breath quickened, a chill hugging the nape of her neck, as Richard leaned in, his voice low and urgent. "Well, if you've noticed, people have been dying from their biggest fears," he whispered, the flickering candlelight casting disturbing shadows across his face. "There's this creature. I'm fairly certain it's the thing that killed Chris and also Audrey." An oppressive silence fell over the room, tension thickening the air like fog. Just as the weight of Richard's words sank in, a sudden rustle echoed from the darkened hallway behind them. The hairs on Nala's arms stood on end, a palpable terror creeping into her heart as she turned slowly, fearing the unspeakable truth that was creeping closer. "You're not merely a madman, you've descended into the depths of insanity," Audrey's mother spat, her voice a venomous whisper cutting through the suffocating darkness. "You've taken everything and twisted it into your grotesque plaything, sacrificing my daughter to your fiendish whims." The courtroom hallway was cloaked in shadows, the flickering lights casting eerie shapes against the walls as the tension in the air thickened. A tense silence blanketed the room, broken only by the rustle of papers and the quiet shuffling of feet. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed from outside, reverberating through the dimly lit corridor, chilling everyone inside to their core. Before anyone could react, the heavy doors burst open with a deafening crash. A monstrous figure sprang into the room, its grotesque body twisted and unnaturally elongated, adorned with 4 glaring eyes that glinted with malice. The gasps of disbelief turned into screams of terror as the creature lunged forward with a predatory grace, its razor-sharp claws slicing through the air. In an instant, it was upon the judge, whose shocked expression froze in time as the beast unleashed its fury, rending him in half with one swift, brutal swipe. Blood sprayed across the room, and chaos erupted as the remaining occupants scrambled for safety, but the nightmare had only just begun. In an instant of terror, Audrey's parents sensed the impending doom as the monstrous creature charged toward them. With a singular, swift motion, it unleashed a fatal blow, extinguishing their lives and shattering the tranquility of their existence in a cruel heartbeat. The harrowing sound of their screams echoed through the air, a chilling testament to the brutality of the moment. As Richard and Nala sprinted into the dimly lit hallway, a sense of urgency filled the air. "So, what's our escape plan?" Nala asked, her voice a mix of panic and determination. "We need to break a window or something," Richard shouted, glancing nervously at the 4-eyed monster advancing menacingly behind them. With a surge of adrenaline, he threw himself at the nearest window, shattering the glass with a loud crash. Without a moment's hesitation, he grasped Nala's hand, and together they leaped through the opening, plunging into the unknown beyond. With a thunderous crash, they hit the ground, their hearts racing as they caught their breath. "We made it," Nala exclaimed, relief washing over her like a tide. But the triumphant moment was fleeting, as a shadow loomed behind them, a chilling reminder of the beast they had barely escaped. "Yeah, but that thing is still out there, waiting for us," Richard replied, his voice taut with urgency. A surge of determination ignited within Nala as she scanned their surroundings, her eyes landing on the jagged, spike-shaped pillars jutting from the ground outside the building. A daring plan began to form. What if we could lure it there? "We could use those pillars to end this once and for all," she suggested, her voice steady, echoing the resolve building in her heart. The air crackled with tension as they steeled themselves for the inevitable confrontation, knowing that what lay ahead would determine their fate. Without warning, a man plunged from the shattered window above, his voice filled with anguished cries. His attire suggested he was an officer of the law. Upon impact with the ground, the last vestiges of his life slipped away, and a fully loaded pistol fell from his pocket. "That could prove useful," Nala remarked, recognizing the gravity of the situation. As the 4-eyed monster rounded the corner, a wave of tension filled the air. In that fleeting moment of chaos, Nala swiftly launched the gun to Richard, her eyes locked on the creature drawing closer. A well-aimed shot struck the creature squarely in the eye, causing a steady stream of blood to flow from its wound. In a desperate attempt to free itself from the spike that impaled it, the creature thrashed and twisted, only ensuring that the jagged metal plunged deeper into its flesh. Its anguished cries echoed in the stillness as it writhed in agony, the vibrant light of life slowly dimming as its strength faded away. "It's over, we can head home now," Nala declared as they turned away and made their way to the car. Richard paused, looking back as a heaviness settled in his chest. "But we can't forget the lives it claimed," he replied, his voice tinged with sorrow. "Moving on from loss is never easy, but it's what Chris would have wanted for us." Nala nodded, understanding the weight of his words, knowing that while the journey ahead would be difficult, they would find a way to carry his memory with them. As the weeks rolled on, Richard and Nala gradually returned to the rhythm of their everyday lives. Yet, the absence of F.e.a.r loomed large, casting a shadow over their hearts, a loss they would forever carry with them. The memory of that monster continued to haunt them, surfacing unexpectedly and stirring up buried fears. Despite this dark presence, they chose to push those thoughts aside, opting instead to focus on the semblance of normalcy they had reclaimed, even as the specter of their past lingered at the edge of their minds. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm off to work. Catch you later," Nala called out cheerfully as she made her way to the door. "Have a great day. Stay safe out there, and if you get a chance, could you grab us some dinner on your way home?" Richard replied with a smile. "Of course. What are you in the mood for?" Nala asked, curious. "I'm craving chicken, or maybe some pizza," he said, his stomach rumbling with anticipation. As the hours rolled by, Richard settled comfortably on the couch, turning on his favorite TV channel, ready to unwind and enjoy the fleeting moments of his day. As the evening descended, Richard received a phone call from Nala. "Hey, honey, I'm going to be a little late," she said, her voice slightly tinged with worry. "I had to take an Uber because there's some kind of gang-related incident blocking my usual route home." Richard listened attentively and replied, "That's fine. I can whip up dinner in the meantime." "But you know, that's got me thinking, what do you mean?" Nala asked, sensing a shift in his tone. Richard hesitated before continuing. "Well, I've been curious about something since everything went down. We know Chris's greatest fear, but you've never shared yours." A thoughtful silence hung between them for a moment before Nala replied. "My biggest fear, besides losing my son, of course, and death, which I know my sister feared as well, is probably getting into a car crash." Suddenly, over the phone, a jarring noise reminiscent of a crash echoed, accompanied by distant screams. "Nala," he called out, but received no reply. "Nala, are you there?" he repeated, his voice rising with concern, yet still, there was silence.